Now, moving on, we have Dr. Ranjit Sil, Associate Professor, Department of Law, Northeastern Hill University, Shillong. He has done his LLB, LLM, and PhD from the University of Burdwan, West Bengal. Joined the University NIHU as an assistant professor in Department of Law on 9th February 2010 and continuing to serve. He has earned his credit for more than 14 years of teaching experience in total. Before joining this university, he has served as lecturer in different colleges and universities on full-time contractual basis. He taught in Tripura Government Law College, Agartala, Tripura. Department of Law, the University of North Bengal, West Bengal, Haldia Law University, Purba Mednipur, West Bengal, Bengal Law College, Bolpur, Shantiniketan, West Bengal, Sikkim Central University, Gangtok, Sikkim. During this tenure, he has served as principal in charge of Bengal Law College and as the head in charge of the Department of Law, Sikkim Central University. He has published more than 14 articles in different journals and edited books. He has attended nearly 10 national and international seminars and workshops. He delivered lectures as resource persons in different training programs and of Police Training Academy of the state of Meghalaya and Tripura. He is teaching presently human rights, labor laws, criminal procedure code, forensic science and law in forensic science and law in 5 years integrated LLB programs, criminology and penology for LLM, course and judicial process for PhD course work program. At present, he is supervising 3 research scholars in the Department of Law, NIHU, Shillong. He was a member of School Board, School of Social Sciences, NIHU, governing body member of Shillong Law College, Shillong, Board of Studies member, Department of History and Archaeology, Tura Campus, NIHU. Presently, he is a member of Board of Studies, Department of Law, NIHU, Shillong. He is a member of Editor Board of Law Journal titled Indian Human Rights Law Review, published by R. Cambry of and Cooperatives Private Limited, 14 Ganesh Chandra Avenue, Kolkata. He has done his research on the topic legal control and urbanization with special reference to unabated growth of apartments in Kolkata and his suburbs. Sir, it is an honor for us to have you on board. Over to you, sir.
I have chosen my topic for today's presentation, that sustainable human settlement and vertical mixed use, a special focus on Shillong agglomeration. This is my topic for today's presentation. So whenever we are using the term sustainable human settlement, so we are getting a point that it is a part of urbanization process. So for this topic, some controlling words first I want to explain that the urbanization, urban development, and human settlement and sustainability of the human settlement. So by the term development, we may understand so many things, but grossly for common man understanding, by the word development we mean that is the economic activities and the physical structural development on the earth. Basically, development is a relationship between man and land on this earth, but it has different parameters. Development should be all encompassing, including the cultural aspects, the social aspects, the economic aspects, and political aspect of it. But we know whenever we are using the term development, it has some core political content. Who's for this development and who is demanding this development? So all are stakeholders, and among these stakeholders, 2 terms come: the development for whom and who is demanding such a development. But whatever may be, development has attracted some terms from international conventions, and development that's why is defined as a comprehensive economic, social, cultural, and political process which aims at the constant improvement of well-being of the entire population in development and in the fair distribution of benefits they are under or they are from. Whenever we are using the term fair distributions, we can refer to our constitutional provisions under Directive Principles of State Policy, Article 38 and Article 39, which talks about the duty and obligations of a social welfare state to minimize the gap, economic gap between the poor and rich, and fair distributions of the material resources on this earth, so that the wealth should not be concentrated into the hands of the few. But here, the development, what I have defined in the slide, that contains only the physical aspect of the development, that is a structural improvement on earth, in, on, over, or under. That means a man-made structure, a built structure on this earth. So it has three parameters, that is its substantial effect upon the human life and the physical impact upon the earth surface or as a built environment, and the development in connections with the building regulations, the zoning regulations, and the rules and regulations set by the state. Please, next slide. Now, what is sustainable development? Whenever we are using the term sustainable development, again another question comes regarding the sustainability. What is sustainable? It's a very critical question to address. That's why in sustainable development, we may understand it talks about three parameters, that is the human development, the economic activities, and the environmental balance or the ecosystem. So whatever may be, we all, entire society and different political institutions and economic activities, still we are in quest of the proper comprehensive definitions of sustainability. Next slide. Next slide, please. Now, next slide, please. Yes. So in this slide, I have tried to make you understand what the sustainable development and sustainable human settlement that has received the international attractions or the connotations. First, the UN General Conference Habitat 2, which was held in June 1996, that focused on two main themes, that is sustainable human settlements in an urbanizing world and adequate shelter for all. But it was a vision. Still, we have to think whether such vision has been converted into a mission so far. It's left a question mark. Next, the Istanbul Declaration on Human Settlements that also endorsed the universal goal of ensuring shelter for all and for making human settlements safer, healthier, more livable, equitable, and sustainable, and more productive. So all these terms we are getting within the definitions of sustainable human settlement given by these Istanbul declarations, that is, whatever may be the developmental activities going on and around on this earth, the human being must be in the center. The making human settlements safer, that means safety aspect, healthier, so that it may be conducive towards the sound growth or the healthier aspect of the human being. It should be more livable, equitable, that means equitable distribution of the resources, and sustainable and more productive in a sense, in an all-inclusive sense, in a growth of the entire human being. It should be productive in psychological aspect, social aspect, economic aspect, cultural aspect, and political aspect. The two major themes of Istanbul Declaration were, that is adequate shelter for all and sustainable human settlement, and reaffirming existing and forging with the partnership with the players for action at the international level, national level, regional level, and local levels. That means the Vancouver Istanbul Declarations on Human Settlement that focused on two main themes, that is sustainable human settlement and forging new partnership by the players in the market in international, national, regional, and a local level. The Vancouver Declaration on Human Settlements reaffirmed that adequate shelter and services were basic human rights. And while taking steps in promoting these rights, so priority must be given to the needs of the poor and homeless and most vulnerable groups of the society. The General Assembly, taking spirit from these international conventions regarding the human settlement, they put focus on several aspects and urge the governments, national governments, to accept certain steps. For example, to demonstrate renewed political commitment to the shelter needs of the poor and disadvantaged group of the society, to provide access to land and ensure security of tenure in squatter settlement, to adopt codes and regulations to the needs of the people, to facilitate community participation and to improve access to credit and loans and promoting local and affordable building materials. So these are very vital. If we analyze throughout our national level what is the progress on this human settlement level, we can see that very few actions has been taken by the national government to promote all these international concerns of sustainable human settlement. We know our 21st century is a phenomenon of rapid urbanizations and development, which displays unprecedented growth in cities, in developing countries. Even now, in the remotest pocket of the villages, we see, though in stress form, negligible form, the development of multi-spread building and infrastructural activities. So it's an economic activities, and that's why demographic trends or the changes taking place which accelerated the urbanization process, throwing certain challenges for managing the growth of cities. That's why the United Nations Human Settlement Program, UN Habitat, has particularly focused on the battle of the sustainable development and sustainable human settlement, which would be achieved if local governments could successfully absorb the rapidly growing urban populations which require provision of housing and basic services, targeted job creation, strategies, allocation of the land for planned city extension. That's why the recently adopted Sustainable Development Goals and New Urban Agenda, which is arising out of the third UN Conference on Housing and Sustainable Development, that is Habitat 3, are the most recent global policy documents. The international organizations like the United Nations and the World Bank, they are constantly put their efforts to collect knowledge and develop policies and programs to be applicable for the global platform. So the research in this field is required to better understand the future trends of our cities. We cannot deny the future trends. We all are sufficiently aware what is happening in and around us. That everywhere we are seeing every 5 or 10 years interval the rapid changes of our physical structure of the environment, rapid urbanizations and developmental activities going on, which putting constant threats and challenges to the existing infrastructure and basic services for the human being. The process of urbanization, it's a gradual process and its socioeconomic and political aspects which need to be understood in a holistic manner, which requires a multidisciplinary approach for conceptualizing the urban transition in developing countries. So in my first title slide, I have put the word sustainable human settlement and vertical mixed use, these two words with colon. More particularly, I want to put emphasis my this presentation on Shillong urban agglomeration chapter. So these three things are very contradicting. Why contradicting? I want to say first the word vertical mixed use. What actually the vertical mixed use mean? The vertical mixed use, it is a foreign concept. In India, which have not totally still accepted or not accepting the vertical mixed use concept in real sense. We have just taken the skyscrapers or multi-stored building activities by the market players, that may be local level promoters or MNCs, just to supply the human settlement needs. This is only the one aspect. But what vertical mixed use means? Vertical mixed use is a solution which I have given in my, I think, next slide. Please, next slide. Yes. If the slides you go through, you will see the vertical mixed use is the best solution in the modern urbanizing world. It has some advantages. For example, it may give sufficient space optimum use. It means actually in the ground level, there must be the vacant spaces left over for parking. The parking is the solutions, because in the near future there is increased number of public vehicles as well as the private vehicles. So to accommodate the ever increasing population pressure and the vehicular problem in the urbanized world, so there must be the ground level space must be left open whenever any developmental project or any private property in a multi-story building being erected in the urban areas. It should be made a compulsion, and it is compulsory in the foreign countries. But if we go through in our rules, regulations, laws, nowhere it is made a compulsion. This is a lacking in the governmental policies or rules and regulations. In summer, you will see the people are just keeping it vacant, the parking places. In summer, the promoters are using it for their further benefit in the form of office space or the shop space. That should not be done. Second, the first and second floor that must be kept open for commercial activities, where the retail shop, the shops, or any public office, private office, that may be accommodated. And then fifth or fourth onwards, that structure must be used as the residential building. This is the true interpretations and proper connotations of the word vertical mixed use. So that's in a rhetoric sense I have used in my slide vertical mixed use, because the vertical mixed use concept in India has not completely started. Rather, the multi-story building or the skyscraper culture we have borrowed from the foreign countries. So it has so many benefits. For example, it may create the local, it may boost up the local economic growth, the business activities. It may attract the foreigners also, the pedestrians or the local residents. So lots of solutions in the economic growth to accommodate ever increasing urban population, that is there in the vertical mixed use, but which is not really the practice in our Indian context. Now, next slide, please. Yes. What is the developmental analysis? Whenever in an urbanizing process, any developmental activities, we may not avoid developmental activities, because nowadays we are living in an urbanizing world. And statistics says by 2050, the most of the 70% of the world populations will gradually being transformed to the urban areas. And not only that, even there is a pressure of populations from the fringe areas, the village areas. Because of the migration, the people are preferring to come to the urban areas. So there is no alternative solutions except thinking about the rules and regulations and modifications of our existing system to accommodate these multi-stored building or developmental activities. So it's a slogan, SWOT. What is SWOT? S for strength, W for weakness, O for opportunity, and T for threat. Whenever we are talking about the developmental activities, we have to face these four parameters. So always strength is there, because now we are living in a technological age. We are now living in an internet kind of things, internet societies. So now we are talking about the smart cities. So the technological progress and development is an opportunity, strength. At the same time, we have certain weaknesses too. What are the weaknesses? Population growth. We know the population is ever increasing, and there is a pressure of populations to accommodate in any new urbanizing society. And limited area for expansion. We know the land is very limited structure, and so there is very limited scope for expansion of the land. and non-cohesive planning. If we go through our planning provisions, different rules, regulations, codes, planning legislations, and administrative authorities. So one common phenomenon throughout the country is that there is a multiplicity of the organizations and there is no proper cohesion or coordinations between. So multiplicity and split of the organizations, that really a problem and challenges nowadays to make a comprehensive planning for the solutions. Lack of integrated governance body, which I have told just, inequitable development resulted into widespread congestions in a limited space. Actually, the national urbanization policy, they are talking about the spatial development, depending upon the regional conditions. So small city, medium city, and large city. In the metropolitan area, you know, Calcutta, Chennai, Mumbai, Hyderabad, there is a huge tall building, skyscrapers, but that is a metropolitan city. And in other suburban areas, we see in different pockets, the different small and medium sized urban cities are developing. Even nowadays in the village area, the pocket, remote pocket, we are seeing that the developmental activities are going on. So in our country for a long time, this planning preference has not been emphasized. Rather, developmental activities remain concentrated in the few areas, only the metropolitan towns. And regarding the metropolitan towns or a capital city, in surrounding fringe has developed rapidly because of the economic necessity. People are preferring to remain in the close vicinity of the urban areas. So that actually poses a threat because of congested urban areas, lack of infrastructural facilities, and non-availability of sufficient land as the resources. Mass littering, poor civic and pedestrian amenities, poor connectivity, lack of infrastructure, and poor tourism facilities. So these are the weaknesses of any urban developmental activities. So what are the threats? The overstressed infrastructure services are the threats. Development of slum pockets in city whenever there is an urban development. So informal sector in our country, the informal sector's contribution is larger. Nearly 80% of the population, they are engaged in informal economy. And this informal economy is the backbone of the formal economy. But if we analyze our rules, regulations, and policies, we see there is a neglect or lack of that means proper understanding the contributions of regarding this informal economy or the people who are engaged or involved in these informal unorganized sectors. They are the large contributors towards our economy, but they are neglected. And that's why side by side with any urban development, we see different pockets of slums develop, and that creates further problem on environmental equilibrium questions. So overstressed on infrastructure services, development of slum pockets in the city, increasing population of private vehicles, pollution of natural water resources, noise level increasing. So these are the threats. That means development is a need. We cannot oppose it. Development is a need of the present society. But at the side by side, when we are talking about the development, what is sustainability? What is sustainable development? That we have to understand. Whenever we are talking about the sustainable development, so sustainability brings with it all these things in any new urbanizing process. So this SWOT analysis must be done. That is strength. Of course, strength is there. As I have told, the technological progress is a strength. Weakness, threat, and opportunity. Opportunity is there. What kind of opportunity? With the new kind of development, we see the economic activities are getting accelerated, and that can accommodate huge number of the peoples in an economic sense to provide them employment and to solve the unemployment problem. So these are the opportunity. So side by side, along with the opportunity and strength, if the players in the market, they think properly with a proper coordination the threats and weaknesses. So these are the challenges in the 21st century in the rapid urbanization process. We have to analyze, we have to see what are the threats and what are the weaknesses of our available existing infrastructural conditions, then the urbanizing world may develop in a sustainable manner. Next slide, please. Next slide, yes. So in this next slide, actually, the entire thing I have tried to assimilate. Entire thing I have to try to assimilate in a sense, which actually will give a clear picture what I want to say. In my title slide, I have used the term vertical mixed use, and I have explained the vertical mixed use concept we have not borrowed in our country in totality or by spirit. We have just accepted the multi-storied building or the structure. What is sustainable human settlement? Now we came to understand what is sustainable human settlement, and regarding international conventions talking about the sustainable human settlement. But in this rapid process of urbanization, and particularly in the Shillong context, why I have taken Shillong context, very recently we have seen in a newspaper that Meghalaya High Court has banned nearly 12 number of high-rise buildings which have been erected in Shillong agglomerations and even outside the outskirt of Shillong agglomerations. So this is a great concern, and the basic questions we know in Shillong there is a customary laws being practiced, customary land laws for maintaining the tribal ethics, and in our constitution, sixth schedule is there, and this very sixth schedule is protecting the customary laws of the northeast region, especially in a Meghalaya context. So customary land laws is there. So it's a surprising kind of things within Shillong agglomerations how these 24 numbers of skyscrapers beyond certain limit which is not permissible in a that hill terrain. We know Shillong falls in zone 5 of the seismic activities, and we know National Building Code 2005, which has been amended in 2016. National Building Code has given certain instructions, certain along with the BIS, Bureau of Indian Standard, what structure architecturally is to be allowed in the hill stations, unlike the plain areas. And not only that, whenever any multi-storied building is erected, so the first and foremost priority, that is a building site. In Calcutta Municipal Corporations and in West Bengal Municipal Act, so there is a proper definitions of building site. What is building site? So before passing or the approving of any structure, first qualification to be complied with, that it must be a building site. And in any local governance or the municipal governance, there is a geotechnical engineer, then structural engineer. It depends upon the geotechnical engineer's permission. He first give the approval. This is a building site where this kind of multi-story tall building may be erected. Second, master plan. For any urban development, master plan and zoning regulation, these are very important tools. So in the master plan, we see in one occasion I was just interacting with the director of this Geological Survey of India. So that I interviewed the director. So I came to know from these oral conversations that these Geological Survey of India, they are doing the surveying of the terrain where depending upon the structure where the multi-storied building may be that means erected. So the Geological Survey of India's that a role or the functions that is not properly being implemented in the master plan and tools. And regarding zoning regulations, I'm not talking, but I'm not too much expert in that area with my limited understanding. So I should not say or enter upon that. The main thing is that when High Court has observed in a PIL form, public interest litigation form, the case came before the High Court, and the High Court observed. High Court constituted one committee, and the task was entrusted to that committee to see and to submit the report before the High Court how these multi-storied building in during past times erected in such kind of that hill stations in Meghalaya. Even everyone knows in Barabazar, before Barabazar in Police Bazaar, there is one multi-storied building that's a five-star hotel being erected, and approval was there. So these actually raise some basic questions: how these multi-storied building in violation of National Building Code, especially in such a hill terrain which for Shillong fall within the seismic zone, being approved, and High Court of Meghalaya also having just observed through the committee, and they recommended the amendment, proper amendment and incorporations under the Meghalaya Building Bylaws 2011 to bring the changes. So this is a court matter pending. I should not say much on it. So these 24 number of high-rise buildings in the city is there. Now, the question is the constitutional aspect. If we go to the right to housing in the Indian constitutions and the urban development of the Indian constitutions, we can say that in Indian constitution, actually, it is not properly mentioned regarding the right to housing or urban development. Only in a federal structure, the matter pertaining to housing and urban development has been assigned by the Constitution of India to the state governments. And the Constitution 74th Amendment Act that further delegated many of the activities to the urban local body. So in this regard, I want to say urban local bodies in different regional or national setup, they have prominent role to encompass within their activities these urbanization process, rules, regulations, and the governing and the controlling activities. By such 74th constitutional amendment, 12th schedule, and under part 9A, nearly 18 new articles and 12th schedule has been incorporated, where a three-tier system, municipal Nagar Panchayat, municipal council and municipal corporation, and a district planning committee at every district level in every state, and metropolitan planning committee in every metropolitan area have been provided for in order to prepare a draft development plan. And such 12th schedule of the constitution has listed certain matters. For example, the urban planning, including town planning, regulation of land use and construction of buildings, planning of economic and social development, roads and bridges, water supply for domestic, industrial and commercial purposes, public health, sanitation, conservation and solid waste management, fire services, urban forestry, protection of the environment and promotion of ecological aspects. If we go through the list 1, list 2, list 3, nowhere we will find prominently the provisions of the housing. Only Schedule 7 of the Constitution of India and under list 2 some entries, entry number 5, 6 and 8 of list 2 and entry number 6, 8, 17A, 17B, 20, 34, 42 of list 3, that if we properly interpret, we may say that touch the provision of the housing, and that includes the housing as a subject in the concurrent list 2. So the national government has also certain responsibility to make certain national policies. Of course, national housing policies or urbanization policies are there, and a model code which will inspire the respective state governments to make their own codes. So this is regarding the constitutional aspect regarding urbanization, urban development and housing. Now come to the questions prominently to the Shillong aspect. We know our constitutional framers, particularly the Britishers, before the insertion of the constitution, the Britishers' intention was very clear. They didn't want to touch the customary laws and they preferred non-interference in the customary laws. But when British government came to govern here in Shillong city, that erstwhile that Assam, then that time the Britishers made an agreement with the Hima, the state central authority that is called King, and purchased certain land, and certain land took in lease. those lands are now accepted from the local customary land laws and the tribal set of administrations. Otherwise, and under that agreement with the British, the HIMA had no authority to collect the revenues from the riots here. And particularly in Meghalaya, we have seen here the land tenure system is divided broadly into three. One is that is the communal land, that red communal land, communal property. Second one, that is a private property. So three types of land system. One is individual property. So the land belongs to clans, land belongs to the communities, and individual, that means property. But one thing special here in the customary, that means Khasi customary law, land laws or land management system, there how the private ownership in the land develops here, because the community land, that is belong to community. No individual persons can enjoy there, but individual persons, because previously the jhum cultivation was permitted here, now the people are shifting from that to the cash crops and the commercial cultivations. So whenever through clan or as a membership of a mini village council, anyone get the allotment of the land in a communal land communal land property, common land property. So if any permanent structure is erected there or any developmental activity is done or cultivation done, then in that case he get the right over that development, and subsequently he can transfer such right without transferring the titles. So title is very insecure here to other one. So the main thing is that here in Shillong, though there is no concept of the private ownership, but we can see, we can trace gradually how the private ownership develop here once we get the allotment from the community land and erect or build a permanent structure there, or continually occupy the land for any cash crop or the commercial cultivations, then he or she can establish here the land right here. So this is actually, if we contrast the fifth schedule and sixth schedule of the constitutions, we see the what is the measurable conditions of the tribal people who are governed under fifth schedule in our plain areas. There we see the loss of land, the marginalization of the tribal people from the developmental activities in the plain areas under fifth schedule. But we are happy, luckily we got the sixth schedule here under the Constitution of India given by that time of the British government, who wanted to protect the tribal way of life and tribal ethics here. That's why sixth schedule has protected or could have protected the tribal ethos and the culture and land alienations here. That's a fine thing. But now the main central point in this developmental aspect, to what extent these customary laws can protect the alienations of the land or marginalization of the tribal people. Here, when we are seeing that though in Meghalaya there is a lack of land market, when I am talking about the urban development, for urban development, land market or land bank is required for any state sponsored project or the developmental activities. Now we are talking about the Greater Shillong. There is a developmental aspects of the Greater Shillong. So there is a split between two set of authorities here. One, that is the traditional authorities from HIMA, the state, to Darbar Rate, that is commune council, and at the ground level Darbar Snang, that is village council. So these are the traditional, as per the Khasi customary laws, the traditional administrative authorities who are controlling or governing the land relations. Side by side, by the constitutional arrangement under 6th schedule, state and urban developmental authorities here called MUDA, Meghalaya Urban Developmental Authorities, and autonomous district council under that district commissioners. So these are the constitutional set of arrangement. Though I am not expert in the field, so within my limited understanding, I have gone through certain literature review, and that's why I must acknowledge. I must acknowledge him because I have taken the knowledge from here, the literature review, Mr. M.K. Sukumaran Nayak. This is an article, the constraints on the development of a land market in Meghalaya. So if we talk about the development, the basic questions, can we avoid such developmental activities in a modern urbanizing world? That's a great question. Second, if we come to the sixth schedule, then of course it is we are lucky that we got sixth schedule, and sixth schedule could protect the customary ethos or customary way of life of the tribal people, the tribal ethos for a long time. And as such, in Meghalaya context, we cannot say there is a vast inequality or absolute inequality in existence. It's the contributions of that sixth schedule. But what is a threat in the modern urbanizations? That is a matter of study and demand extensive research work. And one of our department student scholar from our department is doing research on this topic also. That is, how far the sixth schedule can protect this customary way of life or tribal ethos of the tribal culture in the near future, when we are witnessing, when we are getting the witness that the Meghalaya High Court has given us pictures how these 24 number of the high-rise buildings there in Shillong in utter violence of the National Building Code and other rules and regulations. And most importantly, because of these two setup of the urban administration, one is traditional kind of traditional kind of tribal management, land management system, the Darbarsnang, the village council, and autonomous district council, and the district council. On the other hand, the state machineries, urban developmental authority. So there is, in some cases, overlapping of the jurisdiction, and there is a conflict of jurisdiction still going on regarding the governing of this urban land management. So in that case, we can see the main thing that among the protection of the tribal ethos or the tribal way of life within Shillong agglomerations in the developmental aspect, still, though in trace form, we see there are cases of marginalization of tribal people, that is intra-community. So the emergence of one elitist class. Actually, if we see within this customary practice, one loophole is there for conversion of the land from community land to private land. If that, and for registration purpose in Meghalaya, whenever any person goes to any bank for taking loan or any financial institutions, they demand a land registration. So the land registration is a process here. Certain persons from the community land, because of continued occupations, they can claim and documentation process through registrations being done by the local authorities here, and with the strength of that documentations they are taking loan from the financial institutions, and this way there is an emergence of private landed property within the Shillong agglomerations, and that's why particularly in the urban areas within Shillong urban agglomerations, we see there is a rapid development of urbanizations and the development of the urbanizations in the fringe areas. There is no lack of land in Shillong, abundant of lands there in village areas. But whenever we are talking about the urbanization, as Shillong municipal agglomeration is the magnet point of attraction, the people are coming to Shillong from different parts, even from there's a movement of the tribal communities from the village areas to the urban. So it gives excessive pressure to the urban land, and that's why there is a fragmentation of the land within Shillong urban agglomeration. The main problem is that the elite group who can manage fund, they can manage the land here, but the poor tribal people, because of lack of awareness or the knowledge or lack of resources or the fund, they cannot do. So the transfer of the land management is a very difficult process here, which only the certain elitist group can do. So from this literature, I can give one last time. I will conclude with saying that in a study in Mautari Maulang village, Some vulnerable families reportedly became landless and homeless due to the inability to establish or prove their ownership over the land. So, according to the study, it was found that Mrs. Thairit Lindo, in a resident of Maulang, Mautari village in 1983, with her late husband Mr. Lindo, who had registered their plot of land in the village with the state revenue department to raise collateral for a loan from a cooperative society. So Mr. Thyrit Lindo claims that the loan was paid down and family ownership regained over this Kinti land. Under the new Shillong Township project, the survey by the administration team showed the family Lindo's land as a part of bigger land plot owned by one Mrs. Kharkhongar, resident of Laimukhra, Darbar area in Shillong, miles away from the village, and the land was subsequently bought by the state administration from Mr. Kharkhongar. By the time this fieldwork was done, Mr. Lindo and her family had been declared squatters and their houses bulldozed twice by Muda. So this is just an example I take from this literature survey. It means, though in a minimal form, among the tribal community, there is emerging landlessness or marginalization. So sixth schedule has protected to some extent the tribal ethos of the life, the customary laws of Shillong or Meghalaya. But there is a new trends of marginalization of the poor and vulnerable section among the tribal community by the elitist group, and because of that economic power, sufficient awareness and accessibility to the documents, other things they can manage, and this way a new emergence of private landed property within Shillong agglomeration is happening. And side by side, the state sponsored project, now Muda is there, Meghalaya Urban Development Authority, the Greater Shillong project has been undertaken. So this study reveals that though sixth schedule is protecting as a whole the customary tribal ethos and the customary laws, but there is intra-community, that means inequalities. It should be addressed. And now, for the developmental purpose, so there are different zoning legislations, the master plan of Shillong, and different acts. So the government has to take a comprehensive policy, because in a developmental aspect, development means all encompassing development. Development means considering the economic parameter, social parameter, political parameter, and cultural parameters. So it should be taken into account. So it's demand an extensive and a comprehensive research work on it, because a new kind of urbanization and the modern wave of urbanization, there is great questions whether we can persist it, and what would be the future of these six scheduled areas, especially in the Meghalaya, and customary practices and the tribal ethos way of life, which was very fine kind of things. The Britishers, they wanted to preserve it, and the constitutional framers with the noble vision, they incorporated the sixth schedule. So this is my area of the concern that I wanted to focus in Shillong. If such kind of high-rise building is there, so it is a trend that the developmental activity is going on, and it may engulf in near future and create a lot of complexities. Though the customary land management process is a very complicated kind of things to understand here within my limited understanding. So excuse me if I commit any mistake or wrong kind of things I have stated, but with acknowledging the author. So this much I tried to make it focus. What is the present trends in the urbanization? What would be the near future of the Shillong urban agglomerations? And with all respect to traditional ethos, the customary way of life, so it is a good kind of thing. And overall country, if we see the contrasting feature between fifth schedule and sixth schedule, so we can give a good suggestion that sixth schedule is far better than fifth schedule. In the fifth schedule, the tribal people, they are marginalized, they have no proper land tenure security in the wave of development. So who's for the development? Another question, this development, who's for the development? Whether I want this development or the development is being imposed upon us, that's another the great questions to throw open it for the society. So thank you. With this, I am concluding my presentation. I
Thank
think
you
I have
so
taken
much,
some
sir.
extra time.
Thank you so much, sir, for that wonderful speech. You have taken us to a different topic apart from all the basic topics. As we all know, sustainable development is the only pathway for a brighter future for the future generations. Thank you so much, sir.